I'm a young man, male 32, and I have been dating my girlfriend, female 28, for close to 9 years now. We started dating in high school, and ever since she hasn't had any other relationship and she feels we should explore other options. I cannot understand what brought on that idea or why, but I am certain I will never do this. I see an open relationship as a ploy excuse for an affair. Saying I loathe cheating is an understatement. I could never stand it. I've seen what it does to couples, and I don't want that heartache. I come from a family that was ruined because of cheating. My parents have been in love for as long as I can remember, and just when we least expected it, there was an affair and it ruined our home. Today, my mom and dad barely speak to each other. I was 14 when I started to notice the change in my home. Dad came home late and my mom became withdrawn. This was strange to me for a child who grew up to loving parents, family, dinner gifts and all. I didn't understand why my dad always came home late now, while my mom said nothing. I guess things were going behind the back door. I was left out, then my older and only sister started acting up too. She insisted she was going to school in a faraway country. The shock came when nobody said anything or tried to stop her. The old family would have insisted she stay close to home. I went to my sister that night to ask what had happened. Then we heard the noise. Unlike mine, her room is on the same floor as my parents'. I live downstairs and the building is soundproof. You could hardly hear what went on in the other room unless the door was opened. That night, the door was opened and I listened. Despite what Mom keeps saying, eavesdropping was wrong. I heard all the horrible details of my father cheating on my mom. The hurtful way she sounded made me run toward their room. My sister ran after me and pulled me back. She shook her head as she wordlessly warned me not to interfere. Once in the room, she told me to stay put. This is their war. We cannot do anything about it. My once loving family didn't quite recover from that episode. I still don't know the details, but I know what it did to our home. I vowed never to be that kind of man who ruined my family. And I would never condone a woman who cheats. To meeting my girlfriend as a topic I never get tired of talking about. I was the school's favorite rugby star and she was a transferred student. She came into our school looking hot and sweet. Everyone fell for her drip. One thing that about being transferred was all eyes were on you. Unfortunately, my girl didn't like the attention. She was the shy type. At least she was back in school. I remember the day she walked into the high school. I had just finished my game and was coming back with my team. There was a whole crowd cheering as we walked in as the captain. I was in the front with 2 teammates carrying me on their shoulders. She held my legs as we danced and clapped excitedly. Everyone was cheering and clapping. Everyone except for this girl who looked so lost amidst the crowd. I didn't see the look, actually. I was more entranced by her innocent beauty. She was a chestnut-haired girl back then, contrasting to the red-haired woman now. The breeze blew as we opened the door, blowing away her hair everywhere. While she struggled calmly to fix it in place, no one paid attention. But I did. That's for show, the new girl whispered one of my teammates as we walked past her. He had noticed how he remained fixated on her. She's in her class, dude. Shaking my head. I nodded and turned towards the jocks. But though I turned away, the face was imprinted on my memory. And so was the name I wanted to ask when she resumed and how I was meeting her, knowing what the answer would be. I didn't bother to ask. I was mostly always practicing lately. This was rugby season and I loved the game. Well, that and the issues we were having back at home. Mom was moody and Dad was never home. The girl was what I had and I spent most of my time there. So either the new girl had been introduced while I wasn't in class or she hadn't. I wouldn't know. The next day I walked into class expectantly. I was particularly looking for her as I walked into class. I did a quick sweep of everywhere. She wasn't there. With deep regret, I went to my seat. So much for missing rehearsals today. The science teacher walked in then and seeing me in class joked about me gracing him with my presence. I smiled. He was teasing me whenever my mood got me in class. Today was fast dropping and I didn't even know why. Halfway through class, the teacher suddenly stopped and there was my girl. I smiled as she stopped in front of the class. She was apologizing for something, but I barely heard. All I noticed was that her hair was neatly packed today and that she was as beautiful as I thought. The teacher waves were to sit and I was waving that she take the seat beside me. The whole class chorus. I intentionally went like on them, pretending not to know what they meant. To sit beside me was never taken. No one except my teammates was allowed there. It was like an unspoken rule. I think it was left out of respect for the team's captain, but I didn't ask for it. The specs of being a school favorite. People love me. The love didn't end only when I was playing. It goes on right in the class, at the park. Almost everywhere. My schoolmates fight over me. They fight for me. I've seen girls go gaga over whoever dared badmouth me. So generally I was the golden boy. And I think my family also solidified that I'm from one of the prominent families in LA. That my family may have been involved in funding one or two school projects. So everyone knows my sister and me. My older sister, she graduated a couple of years back and had left the city. My parents were planning to return, but it was more of a publicity stunt than love. We didn't want to be a part of that. So my sister blatantly refused to come home. Most people didn't know this. The word on the street was that my mom had to visit her family in Texas and would be back. Only a few people knew what had happened, and by a few I mean myself, my sister, mom, dad, and probably the lady he cheated with. That singular act made my dad lose the respect we had for him. As the new girl walked to my seat, I shook my head to throw my mind off. That's our topic. She smiled and sat when I patted the seat beside me for her to sit. I nodded and waited until the class wasn't paying attention to us, but to the teacher before looking her over. And I kept stealing glances at her all throughout the day. We spoke a few times, just random talks, but I knew I wanted to find out more about this girl, who she was, where she was from. Everything. Before the close of the school that day, I managed to talk her into getting a ride home with me. She obliged, saying that her mom would be picking her up and she wasn't even staying along my route. But who cares? I don't mind a trip. Still, we talked out of class that day, holding hands amidst loud whistling and catcalls. People must have been cheering. Not just me now, but the new girl, though I didn't ask her out yet. I knew I liked her. Walking her out was me saying the other guys should back off. She is spectacular. We became friends that she had a permanent spot beside me. We also exchanged numbers and we chatted back and forth, sending text messages now and then. Before long, we were an item. I didn't ask around, but it was obvious what I wanted. I was biding my time. The rugby team and some other guys who might have been interested knew they stood no chance, so they backed off. They didn't stop my teammates from teasing me mercilessly, though my friendship bloomed very quickly with the new girl. Ours was love at first sight. I liked her a lot. There were so many things we shared in common that kind of hastened the relationship. We became inseparable. So much so that the school's gossip page picked on it. They gave us a nickname. It stuck. Everyone seems to approve. Everyone except my therapist. Due to what was happening back home, my dad insisted we all go for therapy. The man seems to think getting romantically involved with a girl might not be the best for me. I didn't know where he got his theory from, but I knew this wasn't me finding love aside from home. He made me promise not to make her my girlfriend yet and enjoy the friendship we shared until I was certain I wanted to do this, to be sure I wasn't acting out. I did wait. I didn't tell Rochelle what I wanted in so many words. I left her to make her deductions. The silence hurt me more than it did her as I delayed making my intentions known. My friends teased me. They wanted to know why they're so bold. Captain was slacking here. I kept my secret to myself since I could understand. They also meant well. Before that, I was heartbroken by my girlfriend, which is a whole new story. The girl I was dating dumped me for the star player of our school's rival. She played me. I was a mess. When that happened, I started dating my girlfriend, Powell, because we were the school's darlings. I wouldn't call it dating anyway, since we were all just high school kids fooling around. Our relationship was more of a collaboration, and if anything, we were the darlings of the school. I was the golden boy, the school's rugby captain at all. She was the school's head cheerleader, and she is hot. Everyone just assumed we were made for each other, and they pushed us to each other. Then Powell was all over me too, and I had no choice. She liked me, I guess, as the school's golden girl dating me would look great on a resume of social cliches, but she was as vague about what she wanted. We were together for over a year. Dating her was so much work because Powell was a drama queen. She wanted me all over her as she was all over me. I had to go to her rehearsals as the supporting boyfriend, and I must fight. When she was insulted for starting a fight in the first place. When she sneezed, I needed to be rushing forward with a tissue paper. That is what her ex-boyfriend did. Unfortunately, I couldn't do all of that. My training had me away most of the time, though it took me a while. Powell eventually got it. I couldn't be that person for her. But she loved the attention our relationship gave her, so she accepted what she had. On the contrary, though, I wasn't in the loop. Whatever. And whatever chance she had, I did those things. She made me run errands and do annoying things. I even had to fight people for her. I wasn't mean to people. I couldn't. But she was all of that herself. I just had to do the cleaning up without her knowing. People call me the sweet one in the relationship and wonder why I was with her. Outside, my ex could be all sorts of me. But she never jokes about her man. I was her priority when she needed to make me that loving her was complicated. One minute we were good and laughing. The next we would be walking hurriedly away from each other. Then came the intruder while practicing for one of my intensive games. I started to pull away from Powell, but it wasn't intentional. We had this game with our schools, number one enemy and rival. Even our coaches were on edge. We had to put in more extra time practicing as we would die. It was either we win or go through another embarrassing feat at the hands of the rival team. Last year they won us pants down and we were the joke for weeks, even months. We didn't want that this year, so we worked overtime. Somehow, while all this was going on, hell, I became the center of things as our cheerleader. She worked with her members on the best dance steps. So I assumed she had stuff to handle too. Unlike ours, though, the rehearsals came along well and she was always around my practice to watch me play at one of our rehearsals. We were suddenly told the coach from the other team had come to visit with his captain. Rehearsal stopped immediately as the two coaches, ours and the other one, started to exchange sly comments. The rival coach wanted us to stop rehearsing so much as we would never be good enough. He teased us ruthlessly, but we accepted this.